Tonight we are making hockey history.
Canada had invented the game, and so there was no way in the world that some usurper was going to come along and dominate our game and take it.
We really didn't like each other at the end, and it showed.
And I remember Phil Esposito even made the statement, "This is war."
When Paul scored, it was funny to see a hockey team in a dressing room in the States jumping around, kissing one another. We were so happy.
And we were jumping on each other, and all I could hear was, "We did it, we did it, we did it."
I don't think any of us were prepared for the impact it had on the country.
It's Canada's frozen moment. But people remember where they were standing, who they were with, what they were wearing.
People to this day, 40 years later, come up and say, "That was one of the greatest moments of my life when you scored that goal."
Hockey Canada and Paul Henderson is the ultimate trio.
I found out in November, I have 2009, I have lymphocytic lymphoma, chronic leukemia. And so, man, it was like getting punched in the stomach. Cancer? How can I possibly have cancer?
I try to be strong, and I know the journey gets harder as you go along.
He has no fear. His faith is so strong that you have to marvel.
I know that God didn't give me cancer. I just refuse to worry about it. I try to live life as full as we can today, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a citizen of this country.
I think he's had a much greater impact in his post-goal years, just in terms of the way that he has impacted people one-on-one.
He's one of the kindest guys I've ever met. He's just a real person.
And Paul's one of the greatest encouragers in the world.
I know I'm a better person because of Paul, and not many people get to leave that legacy.
We produced this documentary for the 40th anniversary of that goal of the century, and you can order your DVD copy online or at our e-store by calling 1-800-265-3100. And Paul and Eleanor Henderson are with us today to let us know about something very important they're up to these days.
Now, we all know how busy life can get. Carving out even a few minutes in a day to get caught up with your spouse is often a luxury many couples find challenging, but one all of us see as necessary to a healthy marriage. Just imagine how you could benefit with an entire weekend set apart.
Family Life Weekend Getaways are designed to allow you and your spouse time to reconnect, to focus on one another, and spend the quality time you need to let your relationship breathe. So Paul Henderson, along with his bride of 50 years, Eleanor, are here to tell us about their involvement with these weekend getaways and how you can find one in your area. Welcome, guys. Great to have you back.
Good to have you.
Good to be here. Good to see you again.
Well, Paul, we just watched that little trailer for the goal of the century, and in it you mentioned about the challenge with cancer. So just as we start off here, we might be asking, people's minds might be saying, "I wonder how he's doing today." How are things going?
Well, I'm actually very, very fortunate. We got into a clinical trial down in Bethesda, Maryland, at the National Institutes of Health 18 months ago, and it's been a game changer for me. It's just been incredible, and so I'm really doing well right now. It's holding I still have cancer, but it's holding at bay. But I think we know of at least 1,000 people that pray for us every day, and so we're convinced that it's as much the prayers as the medication we're on. But overall, we're doing well, one day at a time, and down the road we go.
Great. We'll keep praying for you, for sure.
And marriage really is one day at a time, isn't it? I mean, you've both spent so much time building into the lives of couples across the country in these Family Life Marriage Weekend Getaways. Eleanor, I know that really, as much as you impact their lives, they probably impact your life as well. Can you tell us one particular story that sticks out in your mind?
Well, over the years, we've heard so many great stories, but I think there's one couple that really has connected with us. It was a couple, it was a conference we were doing, and on the Saturday afternoon, the husband came up to Paul and said, "Would you meet with us at the end of the Saturday sessions?" And Paul said, "Of course we will," but he said, "Well, I need to see if my wife will agree to it." So we said, fine. So he came back after the session, at the end of the day, and he said, yes, she wants to meet with you. So we went and we started meeting with them. And they started sharing their story that they had been living separate lives for 2 years and that there were 2 children involved. And she shared that she was just there. She was done. She was not interested in rebuilding the relationship, but I think she came thinking, okay, this is the last check and I can say I've tried everything. So they agreed to stay the conference. But at the end of the conference, they came up and they said they had agreed to start to work on their marriage. And so he kept up with Paul periodically, and then he said, we've started dating, and we're working towards putting it together. And so then 2 years later, on a Friday night, as we were preparing to do another conference, we get a phone call from them telling them that we, after 2 years, are back. We have restored our marriage, restored our family, and we're now living under the same roof. So please do not give up what you're doing. Do not quit, because it is so needful and just is so valuable in people's lives that we need to keep on having them and keep working through, because so that's one great story. There was many others that we hear different emails and saying how you turned our marriage around, you saved our marriage, but that one was really special to know. That was just not the marriage, but it's when it's the family that's put back together.
Right.
It really is exciting to know that there's children going to have a mom and dad that knows they truly love each other and in it for the long journey.
So what I hear you saying is these weekend getaways, and we're going to dig into them just a bit more, but they're really, for most people, it's a starting point in a relationship. It's not the be-all, end-all that you leave at the end of the weekend and everything's turned around and hunky-dory and peaches and cream, but you get the tools on how to work on your marriage, and then you implement them when you get back home. Is that really what happens?
Well, it is to a degree, but when we first went, we really didn't see much of a why to go. The only reason we went is there was another couple that were really struggling. Nora and I had a good marriage, and we saw no reason to go, but we were going to go because they would go. And so we went to the first conference, and we were blown away. Like, I didn't realize that I was not a very good listener. Eleanor recognized that she didn't express herself very well. And what it did for us, it fine-tuned things in our marriage and made it a lot different. And so it doesn't matter what's going on in your marriage. I think the people that maybe get the most out of it, if you do have a good marriage, you go and, okay, let's work on some things. And we bought some wonderful books, and so it made a huge difference. But like she said, there's a lot of people that come in trouble. And we give you a game plan. Like we've got more positive feedback from this than anything we do, because couples will come up and say, we have a game plan. We didn't understand that. And like Eleanor and I didn't to a lot of degree also. I found out for the first time that God speaks specifically to a husband of how you're supposed to love this woman. Now, I loved her, but I'll tell you what, I got a lot better at doing it. And next year we said we're going to go back again. We knew we needed a refresher, and so we did. And so that's why we're speaking today, because we got the material in front of us, and we have a wonderful relationship because now we're applying God's principles and over the years. But everybody goes through tough times in marriages, but you learn how to handle the tough times, and you handle how to respect one another and get along with one another.
So you started out as a participant, just attending a weekend.
Exactly.
And now you're out helping to teach the weekends. And I know there are a number of different speaking couples that go at these events across Canada and across the U.S. But let's back up a little bit, because we want to talk about your story. But your marriage, going way back to the early days. We might even sprinkle in a few photos along the way. And so talk about kind of the first time you guys met.
How old were you when you met, by the way?
We were 15 and 16.
15
Really?
and 16.
And,
Is this picture kind of around that time?
That would be it.
Yes,
that would be it.
Yes, that's around that time, the first prom. I don't see my orchid there, though. No, we actually met because I grew up in a farming family. We grew up in rural Ontario, over at Goderich, Wingham, Lucknow area, on Lake Huron. And so we didn't go to school together. So obviously we didn't know each other prior to meeting in the grocery store where Paul worked after school. But we lived, our farm was only 7 miles from Lucknow, and so that's where our family would do the grocery shopping. So one day during the summer, our mom sent me into the grocery store, and lo and behold, guess who was working there? This handsome jock, curly-haired, and right over to say, how can I help you? And so we kiddingly laughed that I left this grocery store with 2 of the biggest head of lettuce, and somebody had my phone number as we laughed. And he thought I was a city girl because, see, that was the last stop prior to Lake Huron, the cottage. So he thought I was on my way to our cottage, and then he realized that I was a farmer's daughter.
So you saw this pretty girl walk in the store and you thought, she looks like she could use some help. And you got over there lickety-split. Like, what did you think when you saw her?
Well, you know, it's really interesting. the memory is so vivid. I mean, she had this full dark hair, and I got over to her. She smelled as good as she looked also. And so it was a full court press. But we started taking her out, and I knew very quickly that this is the woman I was going to marry. In fact, I told her within the first month that I was going to marry her. And she said to me, "You're the most arrogant person I've ever met in my life." I said, "Well, that's probably true, but I'm still going to marry you." And so I never ever proposed to her. I just kept telling her, "You're going to be my wife." And finally, 4 years later, she broke down and became my
She broke down.
And there's the photo to prove it. Here we go.
Beautiful wedding picture. So you've been married now for over 50 years. Congratulations on that milestone.
Thank you.
That's quite a... And now you share in these marriage weekends, and no marriage is perfect. So how candid are you in sharing the highlights and the lowlights of your own time?
Well, I think we are pretty real, because I think that's what people, they don't want to see someone that has slick and they perceive that you have it all together. They need to see how you've worked through the wounds or the hurts or the challenges, the struggles of life, and it's not all about you. There's two of you, and that's if you have children. So we're pretty open, pretty vulnerable, and letting them know. And I think that's how it makes the conferees really connect to you, that, hey, if they can do it, we can do it. We have hope. We can go out of here with encouragement. We can leave here at this conference with tools of where to go.
And Paul, how important is a Christ-centered marriage?
Well, see, we believe that's everything. We lean on the Lord every day. We get up this morning, even this morning, we unashamedly ask help from God. And I get up before she does, and Lord, help me to be the man that she needs me to be today. And when you think about that and you go into the day thinking about how I can make this a great day for the Lord, and then you ask for help, it's amazing what God does. And I think one of the reasons God is to go to that first conference. And so the great thing about the conference today is, like, we've asked couples, what do you need addressed? And we've interviewed a lot of them. And so what we're doing is we're addressing issues that the couples need to address. And obviously we're very open. I'm a very open book. She's not quite as open as I am. And so, these are the struggles we had, but this is what you do. This is God's plan on how you can put a great marriage together and make it work. And so we were fortunate. When we were going together, and one of the smartest things we did is I said, "Eleanor, this is a lifelong contract. We're never, ever going to have the option of talking about divorce. And so when the tough time comes, we're going to work through it." And that's really worked. But nowadays, we want to finish well. And so when you want to finish well, you set some, you're not going to screw this up. And I think you start with the end in mind type of deal. And so we encourage people to just pour into your marriage, because you know yourself, you pour into time into your marriage, and it's really good to slow down for a weekend, because what we found is that we got to talk about things, or we should have been talking about, but the material forced us to talk about. And she would say, well, and I would say, "I didn't know you were thinking that." "Well, you never gave me a time to tell me." And I found out that women are a whole lot different than men. And boy, oh boy, you better be aware of that if you want to build a great marriage.
I don't know what he's talking about. Do you, Eleanor?
No, I don't know. But I think for those that have attended maybe previous conferences, it's all fresh new material, and it's not as long, and they've condensed it so there's more interaction time. Just you as a couple, just no one else is involved, just the two of you to share. And so that's the exciting thing for us to think now, that couples do have that time, because if they don't get into the issues while they're at the conference, when you go back home, you're back into the fishbowl and the busyness of life and family again. So that's the ideal, is to give them time to whatever they're trying to resolve or work out. And
it doesn't matter how long you've been married, either newlyweds or you've been married for 30, or 50 years. It doesn't matter. It's never too late to pour into your marriage and to make it the best it can be.
Well, we encourage people, like our daughter, she came with her husband before they got married and opened their eyes. Then after they were married for a year, they came back again, and she said, "Oh man, you just need that, because you forget about things, and just like you say, you get busy, and this slows you down." And then the best part and what I really love about it, we show you how to bring God. Eleanor talks about berating God into our marriage. There's the two of us, but we braid God in, and we listen to what God says about how to develop. a great relationship, a loving, a deep, and intimate relationship, and the responsibilities that you have. And we've found that since we've started going to this, and that's why we teach them, because it reminds us all the time. And you just can't never take each other for granted. And make this today, how can I make it great for my mate? And we start thinking like that, boy.
It changes everything.
Well, the next one upcoming is in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and but there's some throughout the year in different parts of Canada. People can find it, and the website is powertochange.com, and look for Family Life /Family Life
Canada. Make sure you're on the Canadian website because there's Family Life US, and so they are.
That's a good distinction.
Yes.
All right, and so the one coming up in Niagara-on-the-Lake, you're
next
speaking
weekend.
at?
Next weekend. So
okay.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Others coming up soon with other couple speakers, which are in Halifax and Banff, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And so I encourage you to find one near you. If it's not happening, soon, you can look on the website and find out other ones coming up. And so it's so important to just invest in your marriage. And Paul and Eleanor, thank you so much for what you're doing, ongoing, given some health challenges, but God's keeping you going strong. So that's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.